Hi, my name is Gabrielle DeSimone, and my art presentation is on Frida Kahlo. Background. Frida Kahlo was born on July 6, 1907, in her parents' home La Casa Azul in Mexico City, Mexico. Her father was Guillermo Kahlo, a famous German-Mexican photographer, and her mother was Matilda Calderon y Gonzalez, who was of Amerindian and Spanish descent. Frida Kahlo was sickly as a child, and she contracted polio when she was 6 and was bedridden for 9 months. After recovering from the disease, she was left with a limp since it had caused her right leg to grow much thinner than her left. In hopes that she would be able to gain strength from her sickness, her father encouraged her to play sports, and she participated in soccer, swimming, wrestling, and boxing. In 1922, Frida was enrolled in the Preparatoria, which was one of Mexico's premier schools, and she was one of only 35 girls who attended there. During her time at school, she ended up joining a gang and fell in love with one of the leaders, Alejandro Gomez Arias, and witnessed many violent struggles in the streets as the Mexican Revolution continued. On September 17, 1925, Frida Kahlo and Alejandro were traveling together on a bus when it collided with a streetcar. In the crash, she was impaled by a steel handrail which went through her hip and came out the other side. She suffered other serious injuries, including fractures in her spine and pelvis. During her recovery, she stayed at the Red Cross Hospital in Mexico City for several weeks, and then returned home to recuperate further. It was during this time that she began painting, and she finished her first self-portrait the following year. Why Frida Kahlo? Part of the reason why I chose to do this project on Frida Kahlo was her folk art style and how she used her art to express her identity and challenge and question gender, class, and race in Mexican society. I also find it endearing that she incorporates so much of her own personal pain and struggle into her works. Another reason why I chose Frida Kahlo was because she was so unconventional for her time. She actively defied gender stereotypes and refused to alter her unibrow and facial hair in an effort to appear more feminine, while also embracing her feminine side by wearing colorful dresses and decorating her hair with braids and flowers. She was also very open about her sexuality and had a public affair with Josephine Baker, who was an entertainer of the time. She deviated from traditional depiction of women in art and decided to paint on experiences that women face. She included issues like abortion, miscarriage, birth, and breastfeeding, and other experiences that seemed taboo at the time into her works. Style and medium. Frida Kahlo mainly used oils on canvas or masonite, which was a smooth, hard board invented in the 1920s for her paintings. Her paintings often use vibrant colors, which was influenced by Mexican cultures, as well as European surrealism. She also liked to use visual symbolism of her physical pain as a better attempt to understand emotional suffering. She would paint bright, vivid images of internal organs, or her body sliced open to reveal herself in her rawest state. Aside from her more gruesome works, she also enjoyed painting herself cradling animals in forests, which was her own spin on popular Madonna paintings. Her religious symbolism is also seen in her paintings, where she revisits her impalement and contrasts it with the crucifixion of Christ. As well as being considered a popular Mexican surrealist, Frida Kahlo also has many folk art works that are inspired by nature and artifacts of Mexico. Towards the end of the 1920s, she pulled more inspiration from Mexican folk art and said that she was intrigued by its elements of fantasy and fascination with violence and death, and she mixed these elements with surrealism to depict her own pain and death. She was also heavily influenced by Mexicanidad, which was a romantic nationalism that developed after the Revolution. The movement claimed to resist the mindset of cultural inferiority created by colonialism, and it placed importance on indigenous cultures. Because of this, she strived to paved the way for Mexican people and incorporate indigenous and natural elements into her works. Major influences. One of the major influences on Frida Kahlo's art was her recovery in the hospital after her accident. Her injuries were extensive, and she was left with a fractured pelvic bone, a puncture in her abdomen and uterus, a broken spine, leg, collarbone, and a dislocated shoulder. And during the accident, the steel bar that impaled her was actually pulled out by bystanders, causing her a lot of pain and discomfort. While in the hospital, and while later bedridden at home, Frida began to paint to fill the hours, using a special lap easel to allow her to paint from bed. She painted herself mostly, and though she never directly painted her accident, she did create a sketch of the incident and alluded to it in a work called The Bus, which is believed to show her and other passengers waiting on the bus before their fateful journey. Frida was also heavily influenced by her tumultuous relationship with Diego Rivera, a Mexican painter and muralist who was 20 years her senior. They experienced a lot of jealousy and distrust, with both Diego and Frida having multiple affairs. Frida was also unable to have children, as multiple pregnancies were terminated due to her health, and others ending in miscarriage. Her and Rivera's relationship suffered due to this challenge, and she depicted her anguish of being infertile in one of her paintings titled Henry Ford Hospital, which shows her naked in a hospital bed surrounded by images of a fetus, a snail, and her abdomen attached to her by umbilical cords. Popular paintings. Some of Kahlo's more popular paintings included The Two Fridas, Frida and Diego Rivera, The Wounded Deer, and Self-Portrait with Thorn Necklace and Hummingbird. The Two Fridas, painted in 1939, was her first large-scale work and is considered one of her most notable paintings. It is a self-portrait depicting two different versions of her sitting together. One is a traditional Frida in a Tijuana with an exposed and broken heart, and the other is a Frida in modern attire. She said that the image reflected her desperation and loneliness during her separation from her husband. Frida and Diego Rivera, painted in 1931, was created 2 years after Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera married, and is widely considered a wedding portrait. In the painting, Rivera is holding a palette and brushes, while Kahlo is holding his hand and leaning her head towards him. Both are unsmiling. The Wounded Deer, which was painted in 1946, depicts Frida's head on the body of a deer. The deer is in a forest surrounded by dead trees and is shot by multiple arrows. Through this image, Frida shares her physical and emotional suffering by depicting herself as a stag, which is normally used to represent vitality, but instead it's been wounded. It also speaks on her loss of mobility after her accident and the pain that she continues to suffer. In Self-Portrait with Thorn Necklace and Hummingbird, which was painted in 1940, followed her divorce from husband Diego Rivera and depicts her surrounded by a monkey and panther in a jungle. Around her neck is a thorn necklace with a hummingbird attached, and the thorns are piercing her skin. Birds are often used to symbolize freedom, but in the painting the hummingbird is drawn as black and lifeless, which is believed to represent her life after the accident. It is widely believed that the painting is meant to show her bravely facing her sadness and suffering during her separation. Impact. Through her cultural paintings, Frida Kahlo extended Mexican history in her art and crafted cultural ideals, artistic techniques, and social values that have since become important to her country. She's also recognized as one of the most famous Mexican artists of her time, and her unique and daring self-portraits have become a symbol of strength to many of her viewers. Kahlo is also seen as a symbol of female empowerment. She's also referenced in feminist literature. She is revered for how she embraced her natural beauty and is a role model for many young women with unibrows and facial hair. She was a rebel and a revolutionary and was honest about female struggles in her work. Frida lived exactly the way she wanted despite her setbacks and grief. She actively defied stereotypes and beauty standards and has been an example to many young women of how you can suffer and still be empowered.